I want to bring in now Congressman Castro, member of the House Intelligence Committee and the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Congressman, thank you for your time on this Sunday morning. I want to ask you, we just heard, absolutely, we just heard right there, does Secretary Gates have a point? Did President Obama, through his foreign policy, set the stage for Russia's interference in the election?
No, I don't think so. Russia's been doing this with other nations for quite a while. That interview with Bob Gates, although I respect him a lot, was a bit confusing because he talked about the president's foreign policy, him not following through on his rhetoric, but then at the same time he praised the president for disengaging us from prior wars. So it seemed to be, he seemed to be speaking a bit confusingly on that issue.
Well, on Friday you have President Obama who said that he told Vladimir Putin to, quote, cut it out when they met back in September. Was that enough? Should the president have acted more aggressively even before the election?
Well, I think the president was trying to make sure that he didn't tip the scales in the election. He said that very publicly. He's also trying not to get into a full-fledged big fight with Russia, but it's clear that they've been very aggressive. The intelligence agencies and the sitting president have now said that they had a role in affecting the outcome of our election. And I think it's going to be important that we get to the bottom of this specific question. In addition to Russia's involvement, did Russia or the Russians who are responsible for this cooperate with anyone in Donald Trump's presidential campaign on this hacking?
Well, I specifically want to address that and ask you about it in this instance. You have Donald Trump's incoming chief of staff, Reince Priebus, who was just asked this morning about those suggestions, the very thing that you are speaking to, that they may have somehow been in with Russia to disrupt the election. Here's what he had to say, and we'll talk about it.
Of course we didn't interface with the Russians. I mean, this whole thing is a spin job, and I think what the Democrats ought to do is look in the mirror and face the reality that they lost the election, and they lost the election because they're so and completely out of touch with the American people that they're still shell-shocked and they can't believe it. And what is their response? Recounts, Russians, leaked CIA reports.
So what is your response? Is the story an overreaction from your party?
Well, the first thing is that, of course, Democrats realize that we lost the election. We realize that we have to regroup and assess what happened, and we have to come back stronger next time and have a strong message for improving the lives of the American people. That said, those comments don't wipe away the fact that our intelligence agencies have determined that Russia tried to tip the election in favor of Donald Trump. And it's also gotten quite bizarre how President-elect Trump and now Reince Priebus and other surrogates are trying to completely deny what our intelligence agencies and the sitting president have said are fact. And it makes me wonder, quite honestly, whether Russia doesn't have some leverage over the president-elect.
Well, the next question there is proof. If that's the case, then what should that proof be? What proof should they put out there?
That's a fair question. The first thing is that I think some of that will come in the report to President Obama. Now, I hope that as much of that as possible will be declassified so that the American public can see it, because Americans deserve to see it. But the second thing, as the president mentioned before, is that it's also hard to do some of that, to reveal some of that, because you'd have to reveal sources and methods. And when you do that, essentially the hackers would figure out how you're catching them, not just those hackers, but others. And that will compromise our ability to go after other people in the future.
Well, asking for more information is also one thing that's being asked for tomorrow's meeting. You have the electors who are going to cast their ballots. You have a number of them asking for a full briefing on Russians' actions before they do that. Is that something they deserve? Is it fair to ask them to finalize this election if they don't have all the information?
You know, and that is a tough question for the intelligence community, because these are very sensitive topics. But listen, I mean, this is the biggest deal that you could possibly have in our democracy, is a foreign power interfering with the way we vote and who we choose as president. So I wish that they had been able to get at least some briefing directly related to Russia's involvement, and more specifically and more importantly, whether there was any cooperation between Russia and the Donald Trump campaign.
Well, let me ask you this about relationship with Russia and hostilities there that we've certainly seen in the past. Donald Trump has taken a lot of heat from your party for his apparent friendliness towards Putin. But is there any part here that could be beneficial to have a president who isn't outright hostile? Couldn't it maybe help the United States in strengthening a relationship with Russia?
You know, after the fall of the Soviet Union in the early 1990s, the United States spent a lot of time trying to engage Russia and have it be part of the nations of the world. There's no question that it's important to have some diplomatic relation with Russia because, for example, they're part of the UN Security Council, and you need their cooperation when you're going to sanction North Korea, you're going to sanction Iran, or take on other challenges in the world. But they've also shown themselves to be quite aggressive on other things and really acting against U.S. interests. They've invaded 2 sovereign countries in the last decade. And so there's got to be a way for the United States to stand up to Russia and show them that these things are not acceptable.
Let me ask you this. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, and simply currying favor with them and bowing down to Vladimir Putin, treating him like he's your best friend, even though he's invading countries, even though he's been part of this slaughter that's going on in Syria, particularly over the last few weeks. We shouldn't have an American president who's doing that.
Well, I want to ask you, when it comes to this, too, that was making some headlines this morning, NBC's Chuck Todd asked the Clinton campaign, the CEO, John Podesta, if he believes these elections were free and fair. There wasn't a direct answer from that, but is it fair for the Clinton camp to question the election results when that's exactly what she criticized Donald Trump for after that debate?
Sure. I think that Hillary Clinton, she just ran a very tough and hard campaign for president. She's a former Secretary of State, former First Lady, and a respectable person, and she's entitled to her opinion and her assessment about the election.
All right. Thank you, Representative Joaquin Castro. I appreciate your time and being